Hey everyone, coming at you with one more style or manner of learning before we move on to some other topics. So we've hit classical conditioning, we've hit operant conditioning. I challenge you to pause and see if you can enunciate and explain the difference between the two. Okay, I'm done pausing, but be thinking about that in all seriousness. It's an easy one to confuse. Third form of learning is really quite simple. It's called social learning or modeling, and basically it's just the monkey see, monkey do approach. We tend to learn things by what the people around us are doing. And Albert Bandura famously studied this with his Bobo doll experiments. I've included a video on this. This is classic Psych 101 stuff. Bandura talked about in an interview how anywhere he goes, people recognize his name and are like, oh, you're the Bobo doll guy. So he's done lots of other work, but it's like Journey. People only want to hear Don't Stop Believing, right? So everybody knows Bandura for the Bobo dolls. And at the time, it was very groundbreaking because it showed that just seeing somebody else engage in behavior can cause us to engage in similar behavior. This study was done on kids, and we all know that kids are really influenceable, but the same things work on adults. We see behaviors and we replicate them accordingly. And like so many areas in psychology, our belief that we're immune to this actually makes us more likely to fall prey to it. So, there's a lot of examples. One that I'll give involves gender. So, those of you who frequent men's rooms know that men's rooms are quite strange places, right? They play by a very unique set of rules that involve only using certain urinals depending on who's using other urinals, and not making eye contact, and it's typically silent, and a whole slew of weird things that say, I think, a lot of really unhealthy things about the way we think about gender, but that's another conversation. Take Psych 102 with me and we can talk about gender a lot. But the point being, for our purposes, is that nobody ever sat me down and said, son, this is what you do when you go into the men's room, right? I didn't learn it in that manner, but I definitely learned these behaviors the way any of you who gender identify as male probably learned these behaviors. And again, that's through modeling and seeing what other people are doing in this situation and then acting accordingly. So don't underestimate the power of modeling. It is incredibly potent. This is the one that pisses some people off, though, because then a psychologist like myself can come along and say things like, so when you see a whole bunch of violence on TV or a whole bunch of violence in your video games, then that makes you more inclined toward violent behavior. And you say, shut the fuck up. I play my games and I watch my movies and I'm a peaceful person. I'm never going to go hurt somebody. So yes, of course. More likely to doesn't mean you will. There are millions of variables, and if you grew up in a healthy home and you are psychologically stable and you have a strong support network and perhaps you have the financial security to not need violence as a means to get what you need, etc., etc. Again, millions of variables, and if the only one that's a little bit off is that you're exposed to frequent violence in the media, then sure, you're probably not going to become violent. But it is relevant. There is a correlation. We do see that this can move in a causal direction. So if you're exposed to certain influences consistently, they will shape you. You've heard that you're the product of your 5 closest friends. Obviously an overstatement, but plays to this idea of modeling. So the behaviors of the people that you're close to are going to shape your behaviors in some ways. So all food for thought. Of course, we're individuals and we make our own decisions, but oftentimes those decisions are very influenced by other things, including what's modeled to us by other people. So I think that's what I've got. Oh, cognitive biases. What was on tap for this week? There was self-serving bias, which is basically our brains are just trying to preserve their own self-esteem. So if I give you a test and you score poorly, your brain probably doesn't jump to, oh man, I suck. It's, you know, what the heck, that test wasn't fair. This question was worded strangely, etc., etc. But if I give you a test and you score well, you probably don't think, oh man, like, I mean, you're going to give yourself the credit, right? So that's how self-serving bias tends to work. So I think there was one more, but I'm blanking on it. I'll do a little write-up on it or add another video. So those are some thoughts on social learning. Enjoy the materials that I've included for you, and I'll see you back here again soon.